conflicts and disasters.
Yes, we must continue to raise our voice against child labor in our society because it affects children mentally, physically, socially, and morally. And to talk further about this, we have joined us in the studio barrister NATASHA AKPOTI. She is a lawyer and a social entrepreneur, founder of Builders Hope Foundation, a foundation that promotes child literacy in rural communities. You're welcome to our studios.
Thank you very much, Suleiman. Good morning.
Good morning to you too. Let's just get the basics right, the basics. A lot of definitions about what child labor entails. Now, coming from your own point of view, just to ensure that we are on the same page, what really constitutes child labor?
First, thank you so much for bringing this very vital topic on the forefront of our discussions. We would say child labor is the use of children in businesses that are considered illegal and inhuman. And these businesses or these engagements, they trample upon the development of a child, especially with regards to the education, because it cuts across the physical and psychological aspects of the development of every child. So child labor is extremely horrible, and even though it has been present right from the generation of man, but it's not acceptable, and the vices should be promulgated and stopped as much as possible. We should be able to curb child labor.
Okay, now, in spite of legislative efforts and, the campaign ongoing to end child labor, it's still a major source of concern in Nigeria. What is responsible for this rise?
There are three major factors that are responsible for child labor. The primary factor, which is poverty. In communities that survive on less than $1 a day, an average of 7 members, that's 5 children to parents, the parents, and they find that the fundamental daily concern is feeding. So when you have a parent that can barely feed your children, then you see that automatically these children become sources of income. So that's why the primary engager of child labor is family businesses. You have parents taking their children wards to the farms, or they actually even send them to beg on the streets, to hawk foods, and so many other areas the children have been engaged. So primarily, poverty is the primary sector of child labor. And apart from that is the facility that supports, the societal facility that supports child labor, such as the inattractiveness of education.
That's the second.
No, it still forms under primary. There are two parts of primary, two aspects of the primary sectors. So you see that the public education, which actually should be free, because Nigeria actually in, I think, early 2000s, we became signatories of the IPEC, which is the International Protection and Elimination of Child Labor Act, which encourages that in order to curb child labor, there should be free public education, right? So that the inattractiveness of the public educational system actually is a contributing factor, because when a parent is struggling to feed, then you now have to ask them to contribute, to pay 1,000 or 2,000 naira for primary education. As another factor. Then another major contributing factor in child labor is the cultural sector of it. In Nigeria, very cultural nature, and we find that you are supposed to, by nature, get involved in your father's line of business or your mother's line of business.
At a tender age?
It happens, yes, especially from the age of 5 to 14. That's where we see a lot of child labor exists. So in the north, from the north to the southern part of Nigeria, you see children that are being dragged into the family business line because it's part of their culture.
And we get to see more of girls.
Yes, but I'm getting to that part. Another part of culture is where you feel in some sectors that, in some regions, that the girls are not allowed to go to school. So when you're already put in the poverty line, and then when a parent has an option of selecting which child to take to school, they feel, the girl child usually takes the back seat, so they tend to push forward the male child to school. So that's another sector. Then the third part, which a lot of people do not speak about, is the macroeconomics aspect of it. The macroeconomics is when people look at the opportunity cost of sending a child to school as against what that child can earn for them. So you see then sectors of mining, the mining sector, especially in Nigeria here, that most of the Chinese illegal mines are being run by children. It's more attractive when a child works.
But you know, Barrister, we have the Child Rights Act. Is that really been implemented?
You know, we do have the Child Rights Act, and we do have so many other international acts, you know, but you know, there's a difference between documented issues and the issues that happen in real life. You see, like I tell you, when the basic iota of survival lies in starvation of food or feeding, you can't now tell people that, oh, because there is an act that prohibits child labor, therefore you should not engage your children in generating resources for the home. I know it's morally wrong, and it's extremely wrong. The parents should not support that, and the government should actually strengthen regulations to prohibit child labor. But we need to understand that some of these rural communities where child labor is actually predominant, they do not really understand that these regulations exist or these acts exist.
So how much awareness has been taken to the rural communities? Because that is where you get to see most parents willingly give their children in the bid for education.
Presently, because I work closely with rural communities, I think there's pretty much none. There needs to be a lot of awareness created down at the grassroots, because 70% of children that had been trafficked in child labor are actually located in the rural and neglected sectors of Nigeria. So it's very important that the government increases the awareness and educates the people on the benefits of, you know, allowing their children or their wards to go through the regular child developmental stages to become responsible and productive citizens of the society. And it's very important that we also, as citizens, we don't just rely on the government to do everything. We all owe our civic responsibilities to the communities that we all come from. We don't rely on government alone, and we call upon those who are better off in society, our politicians, our elites, the entrepreneurs, and all these businessmen should step out to ensure that their charities, organization, their philanthropy tailors this aspect of society which needs more demand.
Okay, we'll look at that as we advance in this conversation. But you have, you know, been in touch, or rather, we've been working with different communities to promote education, children education there. Now, you have interacted with these children. What is their orientation as regard to child labor?
Most children I talk to are not happy hawking on the streets. These children want to go back to school. They want to live a life of a regular child. And because I'm a mother of 3, and I understand when I see a 7-year-old selling granuts, and these children are very much aware of the dangers that they find themselves in. Because look at this, most children who are on the streets, we tend to forget that a time will come that these streets will consume them. And when the streets consume these girls, they become prostitutes. You know, they become victims of ritual killings. The boys, they end up being armed robbers. Most of these guys who support the Boko Haram, you know, they're actually children from the streets. So when these children are aware of what is happening and they're aware of the danger that they find themselves in, but they just cannot stop supporting their parents, you know, who they know that, oh, some of them actually orphans, though they know that, oh, their dad is ill, he can't work, he's got no job, and every little thing they bring in, even if it's 100, 200 naira a day, goes a long way in sustaining them for that. So my interaction with these children has been more of an educating factor to me, because it makes me understand how much lack there is there. There's a lot we have to do.
And part of what we should do as a society is protecting the rights of our children. Yeah. And the theme for this year states, in conflicts and disaster, protect children from child labor. What does this say to us?
Practically, in the UK, I think child labor is like 2%. But in Nigeria, we have about 30% of Nigerian children actually engaged in one child labor or the other. So as much as we do have all these regulations and code that you've mentioned, it's important that we understand that some things, it's like a pendulum, some things have got to balance themselves up. If you really want to eradicate child labor, by implementation of these acts and policies and all these regulations, we need to ensure that we look at the other societal, the other aspects that form the foundations that can actually curb this, like empowering the women in the villages, reviving the local industries and these cottage industries which form the basic economics of these people, so that when a typical family can provide for the children the basic, they don't need so much.
In terms of conflict now, like children in the IDP, you can't avoid not having children do this labor.
Okay. Conflicts has been a major contributor to child labor, right? Children of disaster-ridden regions and co. But I want you to say something. Let us not confuse domestic chores and basic help a child brings home. We shouldn't
Are they the
confuse.
same thing?
No. You see, that is why today, as it is, it's very important that we understand that there is still a bit of mismatch in what constitutes child labor. Some countries like India and China, over 100 million Chinese children work in factories and all of that. And it seems when that particular factory takes care of other aspects, understand that, okay, you know what, we can't put so much pressure on that child, or, okay, you work for 3-5 hours and go home. I think to an extent that can be managed. So when you look at a child who is for example, a typical family that's a victim of this Boko Haram, the IDP displaced and all, we can't just telling the children not to engage in one chore or the other that will bring in funds. It's wrong. Like I myself, I'm going to use myself as an example. Growing up, at a time we had some financial problem back home, and I had to go home to the market with my mom to sell a number of things after school or Saturdays. I actually looked forward to that because I understood. I'm telling you, back right when I was like 9 years old.
So when does it become child labor?
It becomes child labor when that activity becomes harmful to the child's general well-being. Every child, I would want my children to work in a way that would open their mind to the entrepreneurial aspect of it. Because, I'm sorry, it's very important because people don't really look at the other side of actually getting your children to be active in one thing or the other, because gradually you build the value essence of hard work, the practice of artisanship and all that, which if you look at today, when you go to Italy, a child at the age of a 15-year-old boy can actually make shoes for you, and that's some sort of earning, decent earning. But when that child now gets to work 24/7 or work 10 hours a day on that child, then it becomes a problem. So it's all about managing the kind of chores or the kind of work or businesses that these children run. We understand that you're facing poverty, and we understand that your child's efforts are necessary, but can you manage reducing the hours of labor, and can you manage not to ensure that the activities are not that strenuous to the child's physical and social well-being? We could also look at the issues of house helps. I know we mentioned that some time ago.
Yes.
We tend to see that children from rural homes are being sent out to to become house helps or nannies in the cities. But when you ask most of these parents that, why did you send your daughter out at the age of 6 or 7 to serve as nanny, the response you get is, this person promised to take my children to school. You understand? So that is why it comes again that if we could probably have the government ensure that the basic public education, primary and secondary, is free, then that lady who probably has sent her 7-year-old daughter as a house help will not be in that position.
Actually,
it's a way, it's like two hands rubbing each other.
Sorry to cut you there, but most states in the Federation now provide free basic education for children as well. But what really I want to get at is the relevance, the importance. I want you to emphasize on the importance of education for parents to understand that they need to send their boys to school.
It is very important we understand that education, I could say, is the only way out of poverty. You have to be able to educate yourself out of poverty. So to all these parents at home, in the rural communities, they should understand that if they really want to escape that circle of poverty that has hovered around them for generations, they should actually send their children to school, because educating a child is educating that child to the possibilities that are in existence beyond that environment. If you would permit me, I would say this as a personal experience as well. My father is the 8th of 13 children, and he was the only one educated out of that. He is just a typical example of what we see every day in the villages, whereby every child in the morning goes to the farm with the father. And my dad only had that opportunity to educate because he heard what was happening. The white men were around, and there was this whole news about schools and all. So he spoke with his mom to please enable him go to school. So here's what my father's mom did. She, after clearing her own part of the farm, she will go and take care of my father's apportioned part without my grandfather knowing, so my dad could go to school.
Now, education is still paramount in all of
It
this.
is.
Because if these people in the rural communities are educated, then they will understand the need for allowing their children to go to school. Now, way forward, what would you say to parents? What would you say to community leaders as regard stopping child labor?
As much as we can, we should step up the advocacy.
Yes.
We should speak against the abuse of children, because it's also called child abuse in the form. It's also child slavery.
Yes.
We should speak against that. But at the same time, it's not enough for those of us in the urban areas or those of us who are opportune to just put those words to them down there. We have to reach out and see where is their major lack. How can we meet them at their point of need so that they will be able to appreciate education? It's not enough for the community leaders to as well just gather them in a round and say, okay, these are the benefits of education, these are the wrongs that child labor does. If you want to sell something to me, I should be able to see the benefits of that. That is what I'm saying. These people at the grassroots, they understand the value of education. As a matter of fact, most parents who are poverty-ridden want their children educated. But they also need our support in ensuring that the education is free, and these schools that we send their kids to are actually equipped. I mentioned that we adopted the education of 600 children.
We don't have time. I'm afraid, Barrister. We need to go. I know you're very passionate about children, which is what you do. We do appreciate your experiences you've shared with us here. Thank you so much for adding value to this conversation. You know, it's been quite enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
She is Barrister NATASHA AKPOTI. She's a legal practitioner, a social entrepreneur, and founder of Builders Hub Foundation, a foundation that promotes child literacy in neglected community. Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
All right, we've been talking about the International Day Against Child Labor. We know that children are special gifts from God, so we should treat them with care.